What are the two classifications of a Titan, and how do they help us understand the ancient creatures on a more fundamental level? Eons before the first humans walked the Earth, the planet was ruled by a race of ancient Titans, many of whom persist to this very day. This home on which we walk once belonged exclusively to them, and while many of them remained hidden for centuries, it doesn't make the Earth any less their home. As the Monsterverse grew and expanded, however, more and more Titans became known, and while some were able to coexist with humanity, others were not so eager to surrender their homeworld. So today, Heralds of the Titans, let's explore how Monarch categorizes and classifies each of these Titans in order to get a better understanding of their functions, their power scaling, and personalities, and how they are translated for human interpretation. First, it's important to understand how Monarch uses the baseline term superspecies, and how this definition was refined over the years. Initially, a superspecies would act as a blanket term used to describe any sort of newly discovered ancient life form, one that Monarch exposed before the rest of the world would know about it, and for a while, this was something that would catch all. But then in the latter half of the 20th century, there was simply not enough Titans to create an accurate classification system, so the precursor term was used to label any new discoveries that Monarch could make. Seemingly the only restriction on what can be classified as a superspecies is the creature's age, and eventually, this term even extended to plant life found within the Hollow Earth. From here, the classification system gets a bit more complicated, and it helps to think of the classifications not as a hierarchy, but more as a Venn diagram. There may be overlap between a few terms, and the combinations and classifications become a Titan's distinct identity. Let's explain further. First, sentient Titans first fall into one of two categories based on their motivations and their instinct, and these terms are the Protector and the Destroyer. All Titans can fall into either of these categories regardless of their classification, which we'll be getting into in just a moment. These classes are fairly self-explanatory, as Titan Protectors are any Titan that is either outwardly protective of the natural balance of an ecosystem or is neutral to it, while Destroyers, on the other hand, actively seek to upset the balance of nature. Titans like Godzilla, Mothra, and Kong are all counted as protectors, and even though Godzilla is apathetic towards humanity, the term does not mean to be a protector of humans. Instead, protectors simply mean those who desire peace and do not wish to challenge the natural order. So even Titans who are neutral are usually labeled as protectors, but creatures like Ghidorah, Muto Prime, and even Rodan could fall into the Destroyer category. Ghidorah is the most prevalent example of a Destroyer-class Titan, since his motives are the most violent, and for a very interesting reason. Seeing as he is an extraterrestrial, Ghidorah holds no place in the current ecosystem, and so he attempts to tear it down from the inside out. He's also the only Titan in the Monsterverse to be classified as a supernatural Titan, seeing as he is not of Earth. While most organic Titans are divided into either alpha or non-alpha Titans, Ghidorah is the only example within the Monsterverse of an organic Titan that falls into a third group and category, though he does eventually work his way up to the rank of an alpha. Until Ghidorah challenges Godzilla though, he doesn't have a place in the Titan hierarchy, which is why he wasn't labeled as an alpha until after he defeated Godzilla and took the crown. Alpha Titans are characterized by their immense strength, and either their ability to challenge for the crown of king, or their control over a considerable domain. Any Titan who is capable of standing a reasonable chance against the reigning king could be considered as an alpha, and in some cases, such as that of the Skullcrawlers, the most powerful of a species is considered to be that species' alpha. While most of the Skullcrawlers in themselves are not alpha Titans, they do have an alpha. Conversely, someone like Kong is considered an alpha for both his strength, but also his rule over his domain. When Kong was introduced, he reigned supreme over Skull Island, and the same can be said for the Scar King and his followers of the Hollow Earth Great Apes. Tiamat and his Arctic territory also counts, as well as of course Godzilla. While owning territory doesn't necessarily make a Titan an alpha, it's usually a good indication that this Titan probably is an alpha, simply because they were strong enough to claim territory and hold it. Non-alpha Titans, however, are the subservient minor Titans that obey the reign of a current alpha. Kong doesn't outright obey Godzilla, but he also doesn't challenge him, and it's been made clear that as long as Kong stays out of Godzilla's territory, then the two can coexist. Someone like Rodan, Methuselah, or the Leviathan though, are classified as non-alpha titans because they stand no reasonable chance at usurping Godzilla and are completely subservient to him. There is another outlier category beyond these two though, which is the synthetic or the cybernetic titan. The most famous cybernetic titan is obviously that of Mechagodzilla. But in the Heisei era, according to the timeline, the first mech was actually Mecha Ghidorah, as he was shortly followed by Mechagodzilla and Mecha Kong. But so far, we have only seen Mechagodzilla be properly introduced into the Monsterverse films. In the Monsterverse, this isn't an official classification yet, since there is only a few members. But if Mecha Kong or Mecha Ghidorah do end up making the leap, then Monarch will open a brand new category officially. Following this, Titans begin to be classified by their physical characteristics. The families are usually formed based on the closest physical and genetic relationships that Titans have to not only one another, but members of their own species. This is where we get in the cryptozoological classification, which sounds much more complicated than it actually is. All this means is that Titanus indicates a Titan status, followed by a classification of a subdivision. Surprisingly, there are several creatures that we perceive to be Titans in the Monsterverse that don't actually follow the Titanus classification. Creatures like the Leafwing, or the Icarus folium, and the Meyer squid, otherwise known as Gigantus leviapus, don't support the Titanus classification, indicating that Monarch regards them as minor titans, and unlike Titanus Kong, Mothra, and Gojira, which are fully formed titans, they are smaller and are a subspecies. From here, each titan can be assigned its own classification simply based on the species that it falls into, and this is where we get Titanus Rodan, Titanus Ghidorah, and the rest of the titan classifications. But anyway, my friends, what do you think of the system that Monarch has classified to use these different types of titans? Do you think that classifying protectors and destroyers as distinct entities is helpful? And how do you think this system can be made more efficient and improved upon? Also, which classification of Titan is your favorite? Be it the Protectors, the Destroyers, or otherwise. As always, my friends, thank you so much for stopping by the channel today. Hit that subscribe button if you've been enjoying the lore, and I hope you're having a great one.